Welcome to EcoFun's video on government policy and international trade. In this video, we will look at the political reality of international trade. First of all, let's start with free trade. Free trade refers to a situation in which the government does not attempt to restrict what its citizens can buy from or sell to another country. Although many nations are nominally committed to free trade, they tend to intervene in international trade to protect the interests of politically important groups or promote the interests of key domestic producers. Trade policy uses 7 main instruments: tariffs, subsidies, import quotas, voluntary export restraints, local content requirements, administrative policies, and anti-dumping duties. In international trade, the government will use the following 7 tools to encourage or restrict trade. First, let's start with tariffs. Tariff is a tax levied on imports or export. Tariffs fall into 2 categories. Specific tariffs are levied as a fixed charge for each unit of goods imported. For instance, $3 per barrel of oil. Ad valorem tariffs are levied as a proportion of the value of the imported good. For example, if a product you are importing has a commercial value of $5,000 and an ad valorem tariff rate of 5%, you would pay $250 in tariff rate charges. Next is subsidies. Subsidy is a government payment to a domestic producer. Subsidies take many forms, including cash grants, low-interest loans, tax breaks, and government equity participation in domestic firms. Import quotas. An import quota is a direct restriction on the quantity of some good that may be imported into a country. For example, the United States has a quota on cheese imports. The only firms that are allowed to import cheese are certain trading companies, each of which is allocated the right to import the maximum number of pounds of cheese each year. Voluntary export restraint. A voluntary export restraint is a quota on trade imposed by the exporting country, typically at the request of the importing country government. For example, under pressure from US government, Japan has to commit to limiting the number of cars exported to this market to no more than 1.68 million units a year. This norm was raised to 1.85 million units in 1984. Next is export tariffs and bans. An export tariff is a tax placed on the export of a good. The goal of an export tariff is to ensure that there is sufficient supply of a good within the country. An export ban is a policy that partially or entirely restricts the export of a good. One well-known example was the ban of export of US crude oil production that was enacted by Congress in 1975. Local content requirements. A local content requirement is the requirement that some specific fraction of a good be produced domestically. Local content regulations provide protection for a domestic producer of parts in the same way an import quota does, by limiting foreign competition. Local content regulations tend to benefit producers and not consumers. Administrative policies. Administrative trade policy are bureaucratic rules designed to make it difficult for imports to enter a country. And finally is anti-dumping policies. Dumping is variously defined as selling goods in a foreign market at below their cost of production, or as selling goods in a foreign market at below their fair market value. Anti-dumping policies are designed to punish foreign firms that engage in dumping. The ultimate objective is to protect domestic producers from unfair foreign competition. Now that we have reviewed the various instruments of trade policy that government can use, it is time to look at the case for government intervention in international trade. Retaliating. The government uses threat of intervention as a bargaining tool to open foreign markets. This may liberalize trade and result in economic gains, but at the same time, it is also a risky strategy. Protecting consumers. Many governments have long had regulation to protect consumers from unsafe products. The indirect effects of such regulation often is to limit or ban the importation of such products, furthering foreign policy objectives. Governments sometimes use trade policy to support their foreign policy objectives. A government may grant preferential trade terms with a country to which it wants to build strong relations. Protecting human rights. Protecting and promoting human rights in other countries is an important element of foreign policy for many democracies. Governments sometimes use trade policy to try to improve human rights policy of trading partners. The infant industry argument. This is by far the oldest economic argument for government intervention. To allow manufacturing to get a toehold, the argument is that governments should temporarily support new industries until they have grown strong enough to meet international competition. Strategic trade policy. Government can help raise national income when a domestic firm gain first mover advantages. A government may intervene in an industry by helping domestic firms to overcome the barriers to entry created by foreign firms that have already reaped first mover advantages. Domestic policies. Governments do not always act in the national interest when they intervene in the economy. Politically important interest groups often influence them. That is all for this video. Thanks for watching.